Again, I'll welcome everyone to Behind the Bench. Today we're talking about scanning and game awareness, and we've got one of the game's leading experts in this topic. He's been all over the world presenting and speaking about it. And Kevin McGreksin, I met Kevin, I'll just say briefly, when he was the technical director at Burlington Soccer Club in Ontario, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I guess that was. And so, I know him personally. We've worked together before. Kevin right now is working as an assistant coach with Club America. So you must be in Mexico right now, right? No? Oh, hold on. I think Kevin is muted here. Hold on.
Actually, I'm actually back in Burlington right now, spending a bit of extra time with the family. So
there you go. Yeah, so it's the off season.
Needed a bit of family time.
Right on. But going back to Mexico, and he's also created a program called Soccer eyeQ, which is a program to help players with this crucial skill of scanning. We all know how important this is as coaches, and I know myself as a scientist as well, and looking forward to sharing some of the insight that Kevin has. So welcome, Kevin, and maybe if you want to kick it off, give us a bit of your background in the game as a player, coach, and how did you get into kind of specializing a little more in scanning and game awareness?
Well, as a player, I had to give up the game, quite early, unfortunately, because of a really bad first touch, as it happened. I got into coaching quite early, which was great because I was a better coach than a player. I got to a reasonable level as a player, but I was a much better coach than a player. And just a coach like any of the other coaches there that I've went through my pathway. I've accrued some knowledge either through formal coach education. I did my UFA license with actually 3 different national associations: the Welsh, the Irish, and the English FAs. So that helped me from that side. But I've been really lucky to work with a lot of great people in the game. Coaches, players. I've worked in both the women's game, the men's game. I've worked at youth level, been at the professional end of the game, worked with grassroots players. So a real broad spectrum of experience there that I feel has stood me in good stead. And I've also been fortunate to have been the technical director of 2 national associations as well. So there's a lot of things that go in the mix, but when it comes to coaching, one of my big passions is, awareness and scanning, which is part of awareness. So that's really where I've found my niche to a certain degree, and I've been, I've worked with the Irish FA for over 10 years, presenting on their UEFA Pro A, B license courses, and helping share my ideas and having discussions with other coaches that are coming through that process. So that's kind of my background, and so I've enjoyed it. I've been lucky. The game's been good to me.
Great, yeah. Well, it's a wealth of experience for sure, and hopefully we can provide some insight to everybody watching, back at home wherever they are. And I can comment, just briefly that I really think, whether we're talking game awareness, scanning, these any type of training or coaching that can be done to help players make decisions, I think is probably, it seems to me like it's almost going to be the future of coaching, and we've figured out a lot about tactics, we've figured out a lot about fitness and those different parts of the game, technical skills, but decision making is still something that players can do better, and of course we know that the players at the higher level make better decisions than the players at the lower levels, and that's one of the things that helps a player progress, right? So it's very important, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I think ultimately the quality and the number of the quality of your decision making is ultimately going to determine what level you're going to play at. And the more good decisions you can make consistently throughout a game, the better chance you've got of playing at a higher level. And we really do see that. Obviously, as you've touched on, nothing's in isolation. So you still need a strong technical component. You still need a strong physical component. We're not going to say that if you're brilliant at scanning, then you'll make the top level, because if you can't control and pass a football, you're not going to make it. If you're not fit enough, you're not going to be able to compete at the highest level. So you know, we need to understand, even though we're going to talk specifically about scanning today, it's part of a more holistic process in developing players and try and help the players to achieve their goals and realize their potential.
Right. Yeah. So excellent point. I know, you know, we spoke a bit offline, and so you know, you've got a presentation that kind of introduces the topic a bit more, and I think why don't we kick it off with that now? Let's have a look. I know you can share your screen, right?
Right. I'll share my screen. Is that up? Is that up there?
Yeah, we can see it. So yeah, so we'll talk a bit about scanning, and then perhaps, you know, moving forward to how it can be implemented. So I'll leave it with you. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So thanks, Richard. Then what I'll do is I'll run through this. I'll probably try and run through this at a fair pace, but at any point, if you yourself or any of the people that are watching would like to ask a question or go over something again or go back to a slide, please just let us know, and we'll do that.
Absolutely.
And I'll try and get through this so we can have a decent Q&A at the end. But here, just to start, so people know, that's big handsome guy in the top left of the screen there with a fancy haircut. That's me.
Very nice.
Showing off my book. The picture next to that was when I was a coach at Dundee United with Jackie McNamara. We were at Partick Thistle first, and then we moved to Dundee United. That's actually wee Goldie. Then Ryan Gold, who's now Whitecaps. He was at the club at the time in the first team squad. Great wee player, and good to see him doing so well. And you can see the colour gloves we've got the players on. We introduced that even at the first team level, at professional level, in the men's game in Scotland there, which was great. Jackie was very open to anything that he felt would help improve the players. And then, in fact, I mentioned in my book, even Thomas Gronemark, the throwing coach, who does a lot of great work with a variety of clubs and associations, and you know, he's getting a lot of press for the work he's done at Liverpool recently. And Jackie got a throwing coach way back at Partick Thistle at about 2012. So what I'm trying to say is kudos to Jackie for being so open-minded to be willing to embrace new ideas. And because at the senior professional level, even nowadays, you still get people that have got a very closed mentality, or they're unwilling to be brave enough to try new things, understandably so, because it's easy to get pilloried in the press and the media for doing something different. Bottom left picture, that's me working with the Croatian FA, Croatian Football Federation. I think that's delivering under A licence. I delivered under A licence and Pro licence over there a few years ago, which was facilitated by Romeo Jozak, a great friend of mine who's, you know, a fantastic footballer mind. And the big picture is me presenting on one of the Irish FA courses. I think it was maybe an A licence, not 100% sure. But that's me presenting on the UEFA courses on this topic of, you know, developing game awareness and scanning, etc.
Right on.
So just crack on with the presentation. Oops. So there's a first technical glitch. I've hit the space bar and nothing has moved.
Do you want to try click your, like, just on the screen again? Like, just click once and then try.
Yeah, we go.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
Right. So. Yeah. I'll intersperse this. I have quite a few quotes throughout the presentation, because there are far better footballing minds than mine out there that have said some incredible things that apply to the game when they were about and apply to the game now. So Cruyff is, as most people are probably aware of who Johan Cruyff is, you play football with your head and your legs are there to help you. If you don't use your head, using your feet won't be sufficient. So again, the brain's hugely important. You still need technical ability, you know, it all plays its part. So, but we've really, as Richard mentioned, I think, you know, looking forward to how we develop players is how do we get them making better decisions, you know, and that's, I think, really where we are as coaches. Here, I'm just going to briefly touch on a decision-making model. There's loads of decision-making models that you can look at there. I'm going to look at a very simple linear-based one here initially, because this is how a lot of people think about decision-making, or this is the very first model that you'll see. But there's what I'd like to say just now, there's some fantastic work done. Gary Klein has a lot of great work on naturalistic decision making. I would recommend people go out and look at his work and read his books.
I'm going to type that in the chat just for everybody. So you're saying naturalistic?
naturalistic decision making, and these models called recognition primed decision making. But if you look, the name of the book has escaped me. Hopefully it'll come back. But he's got some books out. He's done a lot of academic research, some amazing work out there. Also, if people can go and have a look at John Boyd's OODA loop, which was developed, you know, for US fighter pilots 50, 60 years ago, and it still applies today. So I'll have a look at that. And there's actually some great presentations online by a football coach called Larry Paul, an American guy, and he goes into some great detail about it. And there's a couple of books that came out recently, The Playmaker's Advantage, and then the follow-up, The Playmaker's Decisions by Len Zajkowski and Dan Peterson. A couple of great books that I would strongly recommend to people. The second book, they've come up with a decision model, an athlete's decision model as well. So there's other stuff out there. I'm going to do a simple one, then show what my decision model is like. And a lot of people see it, look, decision, action. I call it see, think, play. Some people call it input, input, process, and output, however you want to call it. This is what people normally think of decision making. You take some information in, you process it, you make a decision about it, you carry out an action based on that. They see it as a very linear process, and a lot of people think that's how players make decisions. Unfortunately, what tends to happen is that players will actually control the ball first, before they look up, before they make their decision, before they then carry out their action. So much as we as coaches say, have the picture in your head before you even receive the ball, or know what you're going to do before you get the ball, unfortunately, the players probably haven't even looked a bit to gather in information to know what's going on, to inform their decision making before they get the ball. They get the ball, then they look. They become so focused intently on the ball. And this is what I'm going to say now. This is what happens. Players tend to ball watch. And so does coaches sometimes, you know. But, players tend to ball watch. They focus intently on the ball as it's moving around the playing area from one player to the next. They also tend to focus intently on the ball as it's coming towards them, because they try and focus on that so they can take maybe a good first touch. And they sacrifice scanning the playing area to focus on the ball. So what they do is they focus on the ball, then they control the ball, then they look, then they try and make a decision to then carry out an action. It's far too slow, laborious, allows the opposition to organise themselves, defend appropriately, and means that they miss those precious opportunities that have fleeting moments in a window to take advantage of, to exploit opposition. So that's a very simple idea. The top one being how what I call model 1.0, a basic linear decision model would look like. Again, there are other models out there that are a bit more intricate. So see, think, play, as I've mentioned, all right? I don't think it's like that. I like to think it as more of a more holistic, dynamic process where all the elements interact with each other. So we've got the see, think, play in this process, cyclical process. There's no real start point, no real end point, because they do work off each other. But obviously, you need to see, you do need to see things in order to be able to then inform a decision. Otherwise, the technical term for making a decision based on stuff that you haven't seen is a guess. And I don't want my players playing on guesswork. So I have this decision model that I've made, you know, that I've put, because this is the way I think about the game. So I'm not saying this is the definitive decision maker. I'm saying this is the model that I use because it makes sense to me. And when I articulate it, it makes sense to others. But whether you choose to use a decision model like this or one of the others, that's entirely up to yourselves. I believe that there's three processes there. I've got referencing, framing, and localizing. So like between the see and the think, there's referencing, and this is where the players use signals, situations, and scenarios to inform the decision-making process. So signals are like advanced cues, you know, the advanced cue utilization that we talk about, the subtle body cues that you'll get off the opposition players or teammate players that kind of give away their intentions. So you can act on them in advance. And there's been loads of research on that, but I'm not going to go into that just now. Situations are more like almost the players playing, they have a look at something, they see a picture, and the picture makes sense to them a lot of the time because they've seen something similar before. So they kind of know what's happening there, and that helps inform the decision process because they've experienced a similar situation to that they then use as a frame of reference for their decision making. Scenarios are more specific, as in like the patterns of play that a coach would run. So scenarios are more where situations the player looks at something and makes sense. Scenarios are more the players are looking for specific cues to see that a scenario is up and running, ready for them to carry out a specific game action, normally something that the team have worked on. And these are then triggers for them to carry out certain game actions, hopefully in a coordinated manner. Just to kind of get you listening, again, there's no exact science when it comes to football, but that gives you an idea. With the framing, I'm on about tactical tendencies and technical. So tactical, the game plan that the coach sends you out with, you know, the team, the game model. What are your roles and responsibilities in that game model? The bottom one there, I'll talk about technical, your technical component, right? So between the think and the action, your technical, what you are capable of doing is going to constrain the actions that you consider doing, you know. So if you're not capable of playing a 60-yard pass, and only capable of a 40-yard pass, you're unlikely to even consider trying to play a 60-yard pass. I know us, when we're playing our overage football, we still think we've got it in the locker, and then you find out actually we don't kick the ball as far as we can.
Your range decreases with age, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. You still think you've got it though. And tendencies, that's players, you know, what are their tendencies? What are their playing tendencies? What do they like to do? And a lot of the time this is based on, doesn't necessarily need to be constrained by a player's technical ability. It can just be constrained by what they like to do. For example, Neymar could have 6 passing options available. He's not going to choose any of them a lot of the time. Why? Because he likes to run and dribble with the ball, you know, and he's good at it. Don't get me wrong. And obviously he's technically good enough to, but he loves it. He loves taking on players.
That's his tendency, right?
That's his tendency. Yeah. And you'll have team tendencies as well. So again, that'll kind of inform a player's decision making, how they're going to do things. And then localizing. And here I have 3 things, and people will notice I've got 3 things in each. There could be more in there. I keep it to simple 3 things. You know, people say, you know, the mind can only work with, you know, 5 to 7 things. Well, I'm at 3, so so I keep things simple. So these are just examples. These are the exhaustive lists. So prospecting, perspective, and priming. So prospecting is the actions that you take as you're going about. So that between action and looking, what physical actions do you take? Where do you move? How do you position with your body? How do you move your head to look, to maximize possibly your field of view at any given time, or to take in information that's outside your field of view? So do you position with your body, the ball's at the central defender, you're looking to get it off them. Do you come square to them so you don't see what's further up the field, or do you come with a half open body shape so you can see there and you can see further up the field? That's a simple example. Prospecting also, when you're just moving around the field and the ball is there, are you moving around the field to maximize your position to see things, and are you looking away from the ball at specific times? So it taps into that scanning element. Perspective, the actions that you see, that you detect, some called affordances that they get called. Again, that'll be limited by a player's perspective. And what I mean by that is, again, what your capability levels are, what your technical proficiencies are, will limit the amount of affordances that you're going to detect in the first place. So where in the other component, I was saying the actions that you would consider, what we're on about here is the possible actions that you actually detect in the first place is limited by your technical component. And then priming, very similar to situations and scenarios. That's where we're actually saying you see something, you see it that quick that there's almost an automatic response. The player performs they might still be making a decision, but it's almost at such a subconscious level that most players aren't even aware that they've made a decision. They've just carried out an action in response to something that they've seen. So that's to kind of touch on decision making and show why it's important.
Can I stop you? Sorry, Kevin. I wanted to stop you briefly. I mean, this is a question I have, and I don't know if anybody else is thinking this way as well. But essentially, so your model, right, which we're looking at on the bottom left of the screen. So this is a more comprehensive, let's say, version of see, think, play. But referencing falls under the C category, framing falls under the think category, and localizing falls under the play category. Is that correct? Or
kind of, but it falls between those categories. So okay. Referencing is between C, think. That's the kind of thing that happens between the C and the think. So okay. You take in information, or you're looking for information there. But so you're kind of right, but instead of it being on those bits, it's in between. As you can see here, it's the bits that's in between. It's to try and show how the see and the think interact with each other there. It's to show how the think and the actions or action capabilities interact with each other there, and how the see and the actions interact with each other, to show that they actually interact and influence each other. They don't act independently. So yeah,
great,
good point.
All right, thank you for that.
All right. So we'll focus on hopefully this part, but I think it's important to get that decision making element, or the thoughts on decision making out there. So Guardiola, had a decent career, I would suggest. He's done all right. Taking the right decision in the right moment, that is the most difficult thing in football. And I think he's correct. That as we talked about earlier, that helps separate the levels that players get to. But I'll put a lot of that is down to the fact that players just do not scan enough, and that's whether we talk at the development level or we talk at the senior professional level, and we'll come on to some research that shows that. Game awareness then. So, because we often talk about game awareness, and scanning comes under game awareness, and we use this as some sort of mystical phrase that's normally ill-defined, and we're not really sure what this concept is or what it isn't. And sometimes we treat it almost as if it's the magic fairy dust that somebody's come and sprinkled on people and said, right, there, go, you've got good game awareness, you've got good game awareness. No, but you're not getting any of this dust. You're not getting any game awareness, as if it's something that's been given to you or you're born with.
It's in the ether. Yeah.
Yes, that's it. That's it. It's just there. Yeah. It's there. You've either got it or you've not.
Yeah.
So I built a model that I use for game awareness, but to show that it's not based on it's not without foundation. I've actually based a lot of my work on this model on Micah Ensley, who's been a great support for me. She developed this model for something called situation awareness. It was originally based on, again, pilots or air traffic controllers, people involved in aviation, where situation awareness is obviously hugely important, or could have catastrophic outcomes if there's a poor situation awareness. And she has this model. It's a 3-stage model, but again, if you go and look at it, it has feedback loops from here to there. So, and again, this is worth people go and have a look at. So Micah Ensley's model of situation awareness, please go and have a look at that and see how fascinating that is. And she has 3 levels. She heads them as: 1 is perception of elements in current situation, level 2 is comprehension of current situation, and level 3 is projection of future status. And the research papers goes on to further articulate these. But what I've got there, level 2 goes beyond being aware of the elements that are present to include an understanding of the significance of those elements in light of pertinent operator goals. And the reason that I like to include that is to show that people, when we look at awareness, too often when I discuss awareness with people and we're on about looking and searching for information, they start talking about the player's understanding of that information, the player's interpretation of that information. And I say to them, that's not the first component. That comes at level 2, right? Level 1 is about simply accessing information in the first place, making information available to you. And often we skip that part and we start going on about players need to understand what this means and what that means. Yeah, but you know what? See if they don't look there. See if they don't take their eyes off the ball and look around in the first place. They've not got any information to work off, right? They're not going to be able to utilize their knowledge of what should happen there because they don't see it.
So without perception, you cannot have comprehension.
No, you can't. Well, okay, somebody could come in and be semantic and talk about exactly what perception means, but
yeah,
as long as we understand it, I could have back to this. I could tell you what's behind me just now. I could be right, I could be wrong. If I'm right, it's a lucky guess. If I'm wrong, so be it. But if I look and then you ask me, I've probably got an idea of what's there, and I'll be able to tell you why, because I've informed my decision-making process to tell you. So that's it. So we've got to learn to look first. And that's not to say that understanding and comprehension isn't important. It is. It's hugely important, because if I look at something and don't know what it means, I'm still not going to be a good decision maker. So again, it's a holistic thing. Everything works together. But understanding comes at level 2. Teaching this or helping players to acquire this basic skill of looking around the playing area is so fundamentally important. We've got to get that first. Now, and as I'll mention later on, yes, what happens is players develop, they can then skillfully look around the playing area. And by that, I mean, they have an idea where they should look, you know, as opposed to just scanning and taking in everything. They can then guide their search strategy around the playing area. But first, they've got to get used to looking around. So I keep it quite simple. Again, I like to keep, whereas Micah has quite a few words in each of the headings for each of our levels, I keep mine simple. Observation. Is the first level for me, observation. And that's active scanning of the playing area and panoramic positioning. So all I'm on about is, can you move your head to look around? And ideally, can you maximize your positioning in the playing area, which there's positioning through both body orientation and location on the field. Okay, can you maximize that to maximize your field of view? Okay, so when you stood here, you could see as much of the field as possible. And that's a simple concept that all coaches talk about, but do we really help players implement that? Or do we mention it and then just let players do what they want whenever they want? So active scanning of the playing area and panoramic positioning. Level 2 is what I call realization. Okay, and that's where comprehension comes in. That's where understanding comes in. So that's reading the game and adaptive positioning. So reading the game, putting sense to what you're seeing there. And adaptive positioning is where you actually, instead of just being open to the whole field of play, you're now positioned in relation to key reference points, whether they be ball, teammates, opponents, or space. And you've got your body position orientated appropriately. So I could be stood in the correct place, but if I've got my back to where it should be, then I'm in the wrong positioning. So again, these things work with each other.
Position and orientation, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Level 3 is anticipation. That is exactly what it says on the tin. And predicting how the play is likely to develop, normally based on their experience of what they've seen happen before, and we've talked about that. And prospective positioning. So now, this is a bit more advanced, where players, it's those little movements that players do in anticipation of what's going to happen next. So it's like, I'm here providing cover maybe to the first defender, but I could see the opponent with the ball is maybe shaped up and is going to switch the play over there. So I'll maybe loosen off my covering position and have my weight slightly over to here so I can get there quicker. But I haven't completely disengaged from here, because that might not be what happens, but I've prepared myself for what I anticipate. So if that makes sense. So that's it. Simple. Observation, realization, anticipation. Essentially the same as very similar to Micah's model. And I say that to, you know, pretty much the same, except I emphasize the positioning element, the movement element, because her model was based around, you know, pilots or air traffic controllers who have their displays directly in front of them. They don't really need to search in a 360-degree environment. But she's done research beyond that as well. So again, that's why I say go and look at her research, fascinating stuff. And there you go, little illustration of my model. And again, what we're going to concentrate on here is the level 1, the observation part, the scanning of the playing area. Okay, having a look at it. So take the eyes off the ball and look around the playing area to access information. Says here, and I put it this way, it's the lowest level, but again, these aren't isolated, they're connected, they're nested, the levels. You're not going to have good anticipation if you can't look around, you know, and you're then going to use your anticipation skills to guide your search strategy and where you look. If that, hopefully that makes sense. Again, if there's questions, people can ask.
Sorry, Kevin, I'll stop you there because there is a question and more of a comment that came up. Maybe even if you want to have a look, I'll read it to you quickly from Emanuele de Vigo. So he says he's done a lot of work on scanning that a player who stayed in our program from U9 to perhaps 19, I don't know, that's a typo there. He thanked me because now he does it so naturally that he can't stop and it's part of his game. It was great to see this player with that characteristic. You can now see how much it helps him. I saw that and I was just thinking about what you said about, let's say we can call it the framing and maybe even the referencing side about movements starting to become automatic.
It becomes, and this is what's here on this slide. If you look at on the right hand side of the screen, the bottom left, creating habits. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make this part of what a player does automatically, you know. And a lot of the time we'll talk about it when a player is becoming directly involved with the ball, but they need to do it off the ball and away from the ball as well. Obviously, it has a huge significance when they're receiving the ball. So when they're receiving the ball, it should become part of their receiving skills. You know, when to look and how to look should be ingrained as part of how they receive the ball. But what we tend to do is allow players to learn to control the ball by focusing intently on the ball all the way into their foot. And then we wonder why in the game that's exactly what they do.
That's what they do.
Because that's what they do in training. That's how they've always been trained. That's what we've always allowed them to do. So therefore, that's what they do. So that's the habit. We've trained a habit there that you are allowed to watch the ball from there to here, all the way into your foot. But that's not how you should really play the game. And that, again, that's one of the things that separate top players from others. And you create that habit, and it does tend to help players set. And again, a caveat is this is not the only thing. This is one thing, you know. And I've been lucky. I know a guy called Gear Jordette who's done some amazing work in the research and the scanning. Again, friend of mine. I still remember fondly the first time we met up. 2010, we met up for a coffee and a chat in London, and it felt exhilarating to chat with somebody that kind of was on the same page as me and how important this was and shared a passion about it. And he's the foremost academic on this. He's the godfather of scanning. Brilliant work.
I've seen him. Have a look. Yeah, I've seen him speak live many times. Even when he's done other stuff on dealing with pressure, choking. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, he's
great,
awesome.
Great work. Yeah. And the great thing about him, similar haircut to me. So, you know,
actually, that's true. Yeah, and you know what? And I can add Guardiola too.
Yeah, Guardiola.
Yeah, you're in good company.
Yeah, we are. We're in very good company. So
I have to shave my head.
Yeah, top tip to everybody: to shave your head. There we go. Oops, I've obviously done something. Level 2. Here again. This is in the book. People can have a read of this and they can watch the video back again about what level 2. But it's just the kind of things I've already touched on. And level 3. Again, quote Xavi. Decent career, didn't he? You know, won a few trophies, did all right. He's like my favourite player of all time. Absolutely love him, and he was a master at this. And whenever he gets interviewed, he frequently gets onto this idea of looking around the playing area. You know, think quickly, lift your head up, move, see, think, look before you get the ball. And we talk about this, and all coaches go, well, that's obvious, and it is, but too few players do it often enough or at the right time. So again, we as coaches have got to understand how we can maybe help players. This is a performance cycle that I use. Active scanning, body position I talked about. It's got the 2 elements: body orientation and location on the field. The C being the check again. This works in English for the A, B, C, D, E, F falling on nicely. Other languages maybe not so much, but C being the check again or the confirm. It's that one last look as the ball is even on the way to them, right? And it's hugely important. And again, Gear's research has shown how important this is. He calls it the critical scan. And it's hugely important to how good you are as a player. Decision making, execution. Now they should be looked at independently from each other. I think how good is the player's quality decision making, and it should be evaluated independently from the game action, because a player can make a great decision but just execute the action poorly. Okay, and as a coach educator, I would deliver on many courses or assess people and see them going in and coaching the decision as opposed to coaching the action. So a player would make a good decision on which pass to play, but they'd not execute the pass very well. So the coach would then come in, coach to correct them and say, right, okay, what about this little pass here? The safe pass. I'm going, well, chat with the coach. Well, was the decision right? Was that the right decision? Was it a good decision? Yeah. Are they normally capable of playing that pass? Yeah, right. Okay, so is it the execution that's the problem, or is it the actual decision? Because you're changing the decision here, not the execution. Does that make sense? Whereas execution, and here's the contrary thing in football, execution should be assessed independently from the action, because from the decision, because a player, they can make a poor decision but execute a good pass. So I could pass, similar, I could pass a square ball there, great execution to the player's back foot, which is where I wanted it to go, lovely way to pass, etc. But you know what? There was a better pass up there for the team. So, the execution was good, but was the decision the best one? So again, as a coach.
Yeah, and the inverse is also true for sure, right? That you know what I mean? Like if it was a great decision but a poor execution, that was your example. And I think without this information, it's very likely that coaches may even give coaching advice which they think is going to be really helpful, but perhaps it's it's leading to bad habits or something.
Well, that's it. And I think one of the things I try when I'm working with coaches is get them under, right, what are you going to coach? Because as long as you understand what you're coaching, why you're coaching, are you coaching the decision or are you coaching the execution? Why are you coaching that? Why are you trying to help the player with that element as opposed to maybe this element? And again, that's not to say there's any exact science in football, apart from the exact science stuff. But so again, what a coach, as long as they understand why they're helping the player in the way. And then the F, the follow on, the next action. Too often what you see is players, what I call cognitive lag. They don't re-engage with the game quickly enough. So they'll get the ball, they'll pass it, and then they'll go, look how good that pass is. That's brilliant, by the way, right? As opposed to going, right, pass, scan, what do I need to do now? As I'm moving, can I scan, can I look, do I need to go there, do I need to go there, etc. So follow on, how quickly do they re-engage with the game? And then that cycles back round to and incorporates active scanning to start that process again. So here, a bit of a bland slide, but time and possession, this is based on Carlin's study in 2010, which was in League One in France. So at the professional level, looking at the time and possession during the course of an entire game of players in seconds. So if anybody that's watching want to type in the chat box what they think the time and possession per player, the average time and possession per player during the entire game in seconds. If anybody wants to type that. And it's quite startling when you look at it. I don't think we've got anybody going on the keyboard to do that.
I'm just typing in that. Yeah. You got 120, seconds. 30, yeah.
Right, okay, so actually that's good. It's somewhere in between there. So it's 53.4 seconds during the course of the entire game. Average, obviously some players had a bit more, some players maybe a bit less. 53.4 seconds out of a 90-minute game. Okay, now again, we could go to ball and play time and that, but a 90-minute game, you as a player on average in possession 53.4 seconds. And again, you can look at more recent studies and numbers might have changed slightly, but not overly dramatically a lot of the time. as an average. Your average number of possessions is 46.7. So the amount of times you will actually get the ball during the game is 47 times. Right? At 90 minutes, you get the ball 47 times. That's it. Okay. Your time per possession in this study, the average time in possession when you got the ball was only 1.1 seconds. Right? And your average number of touches per possession was only 2 touches per possession. So I use these numbers to go, look, it just surely shows you that you should already have an idea of what you're going to do with the ball before you even get it, because you don't really have the time to think about these things once you've got the ball, by and large. You've already got to have an idea. Now, you might have went, I think I'm going to go there, and then you might change your mind, so be it. But you should have an idea that I'm going to get the ball and try and go there, whether it's for a pass or dribble, whatever it may be. But you should have an idea what you're going to do beforehand. And you've got limited touches. So you can't take 3, 4, 5 touches and then look to do something if the game's only allowing you 2 touches. Again, these are averages. Okay.
And just to be clear, quickly, Kevin, this is professional. And I think it's probably fair to say that, you know, the lower level you go, perhaps the time per possession goes up a little. Maybe, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Have you seen any research on that? I'm asking. So
to a certain degree, you'll find that averages are reasonably consistent, because when you look at the amount of time that you've got, and then you can go down to the amount of ball and play time. So ball and play time, let's say it's roughly 60 minutes.
Yeah.
So even then, let's say ball and play time is 60 minutes and the ball is physically with a player during that entire ball and play period. Because remember, there's times when the ball is between players, when the ball is in space. So when it's, even if we divide that whole time up, you're on about, there's 22 players on the field, not including any subs that come on to share that time. You're still on about less than 3 minutes. Okay. So you're not in a whole game. You're at maximum. You're probably maximum 2 to 3% of the entire game. You're going to be on the ball. So you're off the ball a lot of the game. It's what you do off the ball becomes incredibly important. And what you need to do is scan in order to work effectively off the ball. So scanning isn't just about when you've got the ball. It's what you do off the ball. What do you do to inform your positioning when you're off the ball, and to inform decision making when you're going to get the ball, to maximize these very small windows of opportunities that you do have with the ball. So that's why scanning is important.
Got it.
Just to kind of show you this, that decision making side, you're on about a very small segment. That the action, everything else is done when you're off the ball, or should be done when you're off the ball. So scanning, hugely important. So quick video. A lot of people have seen this. Just try and count how many times Frank Lampard scans here. This is one of Gear's original videos that he used in his original study into the English Premier League with the midfielders. And we'll come on to some of the data from that. As I play this, if everybody just looks at how often Frank Lampard scans.
I counted 9 there.
So there's actually about 15 to 16 scans in there, you know, and again, it comes down to what's the actual definition of scan, what do you count as a scan. We certainly don't see his eye movements a lot of the time there. So what Gear initially did it is a movement of the head away from the ball to try and make it, you know, so that it was easily discernible. So his research is great. I'd recommend people go and look at it. My official answer to that, when people ask to say how many is it, I go, a lot.
Yeah.
There you go, a lot. And the funny thing is, I remember having a chat with somebody, because they knew I was into scanning, and they were working at national team level. And we were talking about Lampard, and we were talking about scanning. And he said to me, you know what, Ken, actually people go on about that, but I think he looks about too much. Right? And I didn't really know what to say. I just kept quiet. I was like, but in my head, I'm thinking, aye, maybe we should go and have a chat with Frank Lampard and say, just think how much more successful you'd have been if you'd have looked a bit less. Right? It doesn't make sense to me, but you know, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. My opinion is just different for that coaches, right? So Gear's research looked at Premier League midfielders playing in the English Premier League, they looked at the players, how often they looked about, and what they were. They pretty much had three groups: those that looked around a lot, the high visual exploratory behaviour frequency players, so that's that looked about a lot, and the low, right, and the ones in between, right. So when Gear compared and contrasted those that look around a lot, high frequency, those that looked around the lowest, the low frequency players. So here's what I found. The high frequency players that looked around a lot had a 77% forward pass rate. What he measured was, because he's seen that there was a disparity amongst players, and he was like, does this affect their technical component in any way, how they performed the game? And he looked at forward passes. So he found that those that looked around a lot completed about 77% of their forward passes. Those that looked around not so much completed 39% of their forward passes. I would suggest that's quite significant, you know, and what we're on about is English Premier League midfielders. You know, we're on, midfielders playing in the English Premier League. So do you want the player that retains possession and creates opportunities for the team almost 8 times out of 10, or do you want the player that gives the ball away almost over 6 times out of 10? Who do you want in your team? And to me, it would seem obvious. But again, you could look at his data. He shows it a few different ways, but this is one of the ways he shows us data.
Yeah,
I'm wanting the player with a high completion rate.
Sure. Yeah, I was furiously taking notes as you were talking, and then one of the things I came to mind. I don't know if this is in other people's heads as well. Is, you know, how exactly do you quantify the success of scanning? I mean, it's very clear the top players are doing it a lot. I mean, obviously we understand that it needs to be done to get information and make decisions. How do you quantify the success of decision making? Maybe this is a good way to do it, right?
Well, it's again one way, and Gears again, Gear, when he does this, he's brilliant. You know, he never claims that scanning is everything, because it's not. You know, and then we've also got to understand, what do the players see, or what's the interpretation of what they see, or what were they looking for in the first place. But as a simple measure, this shows you the difference in players playing at the top level. The pass completion rate between, in one simple thing, that those that look around a lot and those that don't look around so much. And even at the top level, we're only on about fractions of a difference of how often a lot is and not a lot is. But I think it's very interesting. I think it shows you this a behaviour that's essential, and it's something that we've really got to promote in our players. So here's a wee league table just to show you. Anything over 0.5 scans per second is considered high. So that's that would half a scan every second. So a lot of the measurements are based on the 10 seconds prior to a player receiving the ball. So how often do they look about when they receive the ball? So the half scans per second, the player would have looked around, or did 5 scans in that 10 seconds prior to receiving the ball. Right at the top of the tree there, you see Xavi, who's the highest on record that Gear's ever measured. And he, in the 10 seconds prior to receiving the ball, he averaged over 8 looks in that 10 seconds. So if you have to put a metronome on for that, you'd be going, boop, boop, boop. Right, it's a lot.
Twice every second, amazing.
So it's a high frequency of scanning. And then the players that you see falling in between. It's just interesting to see who does it. And then low scanning would be well below that. Average scanning is about 0.44. Again, another little video of Frank Lampard. Just look how often he scans around.
I hope I didn't underestimate there. I got 13, but I don't know.
So back to my scientific terminology of exactly how often it is.
A lot.
Right. And again, there was a player that played at the top level. Hugely successful player. 20 goals a season for 10 seasons or whatever it is from midfield in the English Premier League. So brilliant player, absolutely brilliant player, and a master at this. Now that was the top of it. Now I mentioned earlier I coached at Dundee United, and this is a video from. Here's me saying video. It shows how old I am. But a video for a game. It was towards the end of the season against Celtic in the Scottish Premier League. We're going to have a look at the midfielder here. Not quite at the same level as Frank Lampard was scanning, but just to show, because we all assume this is what professional players do. So we're going to look at him, the centre midfielder, has the ball, passes it. As the ball's going away, he looks up the field. Ball's coming back to him, he looks up the field. Passes it back again, he looks up the field. He's assessing options, he's having little scans all the time. Right? And you've seen him looking inside. So, and again, we go, that's what every player should do, yada, yada, yada. But let's look at this same clip, and I like to use this because the same clip, let's look at the fullback that he's interacting with the ball, okay? Yeah. So there's the midfielder, and he's got the ball, and here's the fullback, the left back he's going to interact with. Fullback, only looking at the ball, only looking at the ball. Midfielder looks up the field of play. Fullback only looking at the ball. Midfielder looking up. Fullback only looking at the ball. Fullback only looking at the ball. Fullback only looking at the ball. Midfielder looking up. Now, first time fullback's looked up the field. Right? So, and again, you know, this is just to show that there's players at the same level, different positions, I accept that, different, but to show you, players do this differently. Players don't all just look around. We don't all look around. We assume like everybody looks around, but they don't. They don't all look around to the same degree of efficiency or effectiveness, and or the same frequency. So in there, and what I try and emphasise, the point I'm going to say now is, that's not to say that fullback's a bad player. No. He's a good player. He had a good career. Played, you know, he played down in England at a high level. Played in Poland at a high level. Good player. What I'm saying is, as coaches, other things that we can identify to say, here, can we help you add this to your game? And that might help you become an even better player, right? So it's not about saying players are bad. It's about saying, as coach, how can we help somebody be even better? What can we help them add to their game that could improve them as a player? Yeah. And I think that's important to, again, it's not to say just because you don't scan, you're a bad player. And just because you do scan, you're a good player, you know. Yeah. But as coaches, what can we identify that I can, as you as a player, how can I help you? How can I help you add something to what you're already good at that'll maybe help you be even better? Because there was a player, and Jackie talks about it. He mentioned that Jackie did an interview for me with the book, as Gear did, which was great. Mm-hmm. And we talk about a player for Partick Thistle. When we were at Partick Thistle, there was a player there. He was a fullback, a right back. And then once, because we implemented this kind of training every day at Partick Thistle, and we did these sessions, and we had the gloves and the tennis balls going and all that kind of stuff to help players improve their scanning and how quickly they can do it and how quickly they could interact with the ball. And there was this player that we really helped add this to his game. He worked hard, right? And so it's credit, it's not about us, it's about how much work the player puts in, and he embraced this. And well, he's a bit standoffish to start with, as most players are, because it takes them way out of their comfort zone. Okay. Yeah. But he got in it, worked at it, got really good at it. In fact, the second season, he was coaching the new players that came in during the session. Oh, think about this, I do that. He got really good. We moved him from right back to centre midfield, and he became one of our playmakers, right? And Jackie talks about this, right? So this isn't just me saying this. Jackie will tell you, he'll say that, you know, it had a huge impact on him, but everybody else in the squad, but made a good difference. This player became, when we moved to Dundee United, Jackie got the Dundee United job. He was the first player that Jackie signed, and he played, and Dundee United were at a higher level. And then this player went on to play some international football as well. Great. So, and again, it's not to say that this helped him make the player that he was. What this did was help him utilize this now, being able to see more, helped him now take advantage of some of the capabilities that he already had.
Yeah, I mean, you've presented. I mean, there's a clear relationship between number of scans and successful forward passing. Now, I mean, here in your video, you've got an unsuccessful forward pass without scanning. So, I mean, there's definitely something there. And
exactly. Exactly. And the thing is, with Pete, he could pass and control the ball, but he maybe wasn't able to maximize the effectiveness of that range of passing that he had. But once he was able to scan and look about and take in information, you know, he took his game to another level. And Gear talks about that as well, you know, and when I've had a few conversations, he said I think he often says it's like a gateway for them. You know, that this unlocks things for them where they're now able to utilize their abilities to a greater degree.
All right, Kevin. We're almost out of time, so.
Are we? Oh my word!
Question. Yes. But let's keep going.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll quickly flick through this. Key moments for scanning. So 5 key moments that I've identified. We could all debate as the ball is traveling when receiving a pass. Okay, so as the ball's even come to you, can you have one last look? As the ball is traveling after passing the ball, how quickly can you look and assess the picture in the game? As the ball is traveling between 2 players, so whether that's teammates or opponents. So as Richard's passing the ball to John, as that ball's moving, I can have a quick look away. In between touches, when a player is moving with the ball, so this is normally when they're dribbling and exploiting space, but even just moving slowly through, they touch it. In between touches, can you scan away? And the last one I look at, but this is a bit more advanced, as a player's taking a controlling touch. Players must be able to scan left and right. Players must be able to scan horizontally and vertically, so across the field and up and down the field. And left and right, what I mean is left over your left shoulder and over your right shoulder. Again, dominance comes into play there. Players must be able to scan at the right time. Scanning demands can be position specific. So how you need to scan will be determined by what position you play on the field. And scanning demands can be team specific. So how your team plays can affect how you should scan at any given time. But my big thing is, can we develop players to be 360-degree habitual scanners? Then they could fit into any of that position-specific or team-specific game. Because what 9-year-old do you know is going to definitely end up as a centre forward or definitely end up as a left back? You don't.
You don't know.
So we can't train it at that where you got to give them overall scanning. And then as they progress, they can fit their overall scanning into a more distinct pattern.
Kevin, we're good to go over time, just because I'm sure people want to see that quote from Thierry Henry. So yeah, it's okay. Don't rush too much. I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Scanning demands can be game specific as well. So depending on the context of the game, I'll take you quickly back to the Thierry Henry. I'm sorry, I've ran over time here, and
all good.
That's because I get past it. The ball is coming. While the ball is coming, I'm looking. Ball is coming right, but I'm looking there. So again, and I've been fortunate, like I've met Thierry a few times through the Welsh FA, because he did his badges there, and managed to sit down and have a coffee and a chat with him about this, and it's been fantastic. So I'll just show these few videos then. This is maybe another couple of minutes, and if you're willing to extend it. But there's some great resources out there. So this is one by a guy called Slavik Moravsky, and he has Mind Footballness. Look him up on, absolutely brilliant. Here's one of, I think it's Frankie de Jong. This is on Gear's website, Be Your Best. So again, look that up and look up Gear on Twitter. Look how often he's looking about. It's nowhere near the ball. He even looked as the ball was coming to him. Looks away. Ball's coming in, but still looking away. So you can maximize his efficiency with the ball. Here he is again, scanning off the ball and scanning as the ball is coming towards him. Like to put this one in, young Billy Gilmore, because he's Scottish, holding the Scottish end up here. And again, but to highlight, has a scan there, even as the ball's coming to him, he looked again. And that's the important thing. Scan there, ball's coming, still even as the ball comes. And this is where a lot of players don't only focus on the ball. And that critical scan is hugely. There's another one, Slavex. There's his Twitter handle at the bottom there, but he's also got @Mind Footballness. Xavi Alonso, again, he's moving about without the ball. Isn't he involved in the ball, but still looking about the field of play? What are my options? What are my space? Where are opponents? Where are teammates? What can I do with the ball before I even get the ball? So this scanning off the ball is hugely important, not just when we're about to be immediately receiving the ball. And again, mostly look at that for a pass. I'd be happy. Arsene Wenger talks about this a lot as well. So if you go to, and he did a lot of work for Gear, a season-long study. They got them in to do it at Arsenal in other games. Again, he talks about it. There's a clip on YouTube when Arsene's talking at the Science and Sport conference. But he also mentions this in his autobiography. I can't remember where this exact quote's taken because he uses different figures in each one. So, but again, emphasize how important it is. My key thing is players develop as the environment demands development. So if we want players to look a bit more, we've got to put them in environments that force them to look a bit more. And people think, well, you can do that by just playing the game. Well, if you could do it with just playing the game, why is there such a difference in the frequency that players at the top level in the English Premier League look at it? Because they've just played the game. They've just done training. So why are their habits different? So again, some players might pick it up naturally. But what about the players that don't pick it up naturally? They would just go, well, you just get to play the game. You either pick it up or you don't.
I've had these discussions and arguments about this thing about naturally too. You can't control what's happening naturally. There are players that are naturally faster. There are players that are naturally smarter. Oh, okay, great. But you can't control that. But within, the group that you have, of course, you can manipulate the environment. You have to believe that we can't, like you said, think of it as pixie dust.
No.
Yeah.
So, and another example to use is that, so when you were a kid and you came across the road the first time, did your parents just let you play crossing the road and figure it out for yourself?
Or they put constraints on the environment.
Yeah, so what they did was say, right, hold my hand. And what did they do? They coached you. They say, hold your hand, look both ways, say no cars, boom, right? So that's what they do. They coached you. And here's an interesting thing, a point I make. Again, players develop as the environment demands development. If you are in North America, your scanning pattern for crossing the street is different from someone in the UK.
Yeah.
So in the UK, right, I will scan right, left, right. Okay.
Yeah, because
in America, in Canada, you will scan left, right, left. Why? Because the guy on the different side of the road. Where is the first part of traffic coming towards me? Yeah. So your scanning pattern has been developed by the environment. I've seen it countless times. I would have a laugh at Irish FA courses. Would stay in the university, would walk into a pub over the road after classes, would have a beer, social talk about the course that's been going on. And with the first time the American guys or North American guys and girls, the coaches that were there, would come to the road to cross, they're disorientated. They're like, oh. No, they then get into it because they've got the basic concept of scanning and crossing the road and having a look at it. But that initial, this is weird. Why? Because they're used to going left, right, left. We're used to going right, left, right. So, well, I've got, there's probably another 10 slides or so here, Richard. So, this one's important.
The highlights,
right? So, scans per second. Here's a study in Holland and the Netherlands on comparing games to training. So, the games these players needed an average 0.44 scans per second. So, just over 4 scans in the 10 seconds prior to receiving the ball. They looked at the demands that the training session type put on them. Looked at small-sided games, possession games, passing and receiving drills and rondos, and how often they scanned in those. And all of them were below the level required by the game. Rondos were the worst, 0.03. Right? Passing and receiving drills, 0.12. Now, is this to say that these are bad exercises or bad exercise format? No, but it's to say, let's understand as coaches, actually, if we want to elevate the amount of scanning that we're promoting, we're probably going to need to add something in, or we're going to need to add in another constraint of some sort to force more scanning to get them to create a habit and develop a behavior that they need out on the field of play. So that's important there. And the rest of it would just be a couple of little videos about showing how you could develop scanning, but in exercises.
I'm going to suggest, so I'm just in chatting with John online here, our executive director. He's suggesting, perhaps we should have thought of this. But how do you feel about doing a level 2, Kevin? Come back and maybe level 2 can be all about training, because we haven't really talked about how to train.
Sorry. I get so engulfed because I think some of the understanding theory is hugely important, and understanding why it's important to go and add constraints. And I'll add simple constraints, but they all have a reason. But definitely happy to come back and talk specifically about some of the exercises, and we'll go through that a bit quicker. But
I'm sure lots of our coaches have questions. I mean, I really wanted to ask you about perhaps the difference between the training that you're showing and you've got in your book, and which is on field, and whether it's small-sided games or constrained games and things, and some of these new technologies that are coming out, the fit lights, the kind of the cognitive tools, and I mean, I definitely wanted to pick your brain about that too. But
because you mentioned it, gives a little. Love it. I love the technology stuff. I'm as big a sucker, and I use that in the best sense, about the technology stuff. It's great complementary training. Doesn't replace what you do on the grass, but great complementary training. And I think I go out on the grass and do stuff because I put them in a more ecological environment. And what I have players wearing gloves, wristbands, doing this, that, and the next thing. The important thing is the players are still scanning for other players, which is what they need to do in the game. But that's not, I think out on the field is best, and a lot of people will agree with that, but that's not to say don't do the technology based stuff, because it's fantastic and people love it and it's fun, and it's complementary training. Don't just do that alone, but if you could add it, fantastic.
I've used it even, if I'm speaking more from the physical side, but I think this applies here too, that sometimes what you do is you either sacrifice a little bit of specificity for predictability, and perhaps the technology gives you predictability, right? You can program timing and things, or you sacrifice, predictability for specificity. You're mentioning ecologically valid. Well, there's nothing more valid ecologically than playing football and playing in the games a little bit, right? So yeah.
Exactly, but there's a space for all of it, and that's the important. I think. In my experience now, you're seeing too much extremism in coaching, where people say, "Oh, this is bad," and only do this. Well, no, you've probably got to find the right mixture for whoever it is that you're working with, and you'll dip into a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of that, because that suits the needs of this group or that individual athlete or that individual player. So, or these are the facilities that the coaches have got, and that's what they can deliver. So, no, I love every at Club America. We got a football knot, one of the big football knot machines. Fantastic bit of kit. But again, does it do everything I would want it to? No. Is it great fun? Do the players enjoy it? Aye, it's fabulous. And is it of benefit? Yes. So again, complementary training, fantastic.
Yeah, Ryan has a quick question here. I'm sorry, Ryan, I didn't catch it just because of the timing, but players will scan only if they feel how it's benefiting their performance. So they should feel its use during training, games, and drills. That's the only way to develop those habits. Merely asking them to scan won't suffice. So I think it's maybe the point is, can you get players to buy in? Perhaps
you get players to buy in, but also, and I understand the point that Ryan's making. But again, if you make it a constraint, that it's a demand within the session, they need to do it, and it's very obvious when they have or they haven't, and you link it to success, then they do it. And again, coaching skillfully in order to do that is important. But and yeah, you're right. Just asking them to do it, and I have a story about that I mentioned in the book. But just telling people, remember to scan your, because that's how the vast majority of coaches coach scanning. They go, remember to check your shoulder. Great, coach. Yeah. Brilliant. That's fantastic.
And then they just do this, and you don't even know if they've even looked at it.
No. So again, but adding a constraint into your exercises that force the players to scan on a more consistent and continual basis leads to the creation of a habit, leads to developing a behaviour that they take onto the field and perform automatically.
Right. Yeah, it's all excellent information. And Kevin, we're going to have to do a part 2.
Definitely.
I'm sure everybody would love to see, as would I, your examples and to talk more about, how exactly you train this. But we should have thought of this in advance. Us at the NSCAC, we should have realized that there's too much information for just one. But it's almost 3:15. I think perhaps we'll wrap it up now. I can see.
Sorry, can I say one thing here?
Sure, of course,
Rambo's put in this, but Xavi trained in rondos all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Go back to what I said. I didn't say they were bad exercises. I use it at rondos, right? So we're not saying don't use these exercises. We're not saying they don't have a benefit. We're just saying think about if some of the things that they actually train and some of the things that they do not train. And do you want to use rondos and adapt them and add in constraints that maybe promote more scanning, or if you're a coach and you're happy exactly at that level, that's fine. Just understand that rondos do not promote scanning.
Makes sense, because you're
using your peripheral vision. You're in a small space, peripheral vision, doing this.
Yeah, got it. So Kevin, thank you so much. As I said, we'll come back and do this again. Hopefully, sooner than later. We'll reach out and we'll find a Wednesday and we'll get it done. I can see here on the screen, you've got your email and the website where your book is available. Okay, and obviously the topic is scanning. The book is called Scanning: How to Train It and How to Develop Game Awareness. I don't know if there's any other information you'd like to share. How can people, let's say, get in touch with you?
My email address, feel free to email me. It's always great to chat with people and share ideas about this. I put this up. The publishers, just so people know, that's Scanning 10. That's a discount. You'll get 10% off if you choose to go and buy it. I'm not here to try and force my book down your throat. You could get it off Amazon or anywhere else, but if you go to soccertutor.com, who are the publishers, they also do an ebook version. So they do a bundle of the hard copy and the ebook version. Ebook version is instantly downloadable. So by all means, go and have a look. Buy it or not, but please buy it. No, but yeah, it's there, and it has loads of exercises and talks about some of the stuff that we talked about today.
Great. Yeah. So thanks again, Kevin. This was awesome. I hope everybody also, watching at home enjoyed it, as much as I did. And we will, we'll definitely bring you back for a second follow-up discussion here. Thanks so much. I'll wrap it up quickly. All of you that are watching, we always try to just give you a message. Please spread the word about our association. Continue to log in and sign up for these webinars. We're not going to stop, but we need your help. If you're not a member already, consider becoming a member. It's easy to find, nscac.ca/join. The more support and help we get, the more we can do, including bringing on awesome guests like and world experts, really, like Kevin. So thanks so much. It's good to see you again, and we'll see you at part 2. Let's do it in February. All right.
Yes. All right. Cheers, Richard. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Right. Bye. Bye.